Did the transfer go through, Dad? The bank just rang me. My daughter-in-law's voice was sharp through the phone, the way it always was when she wanted something from me. I held the receiver against my ear, looking out the kitchen window at the gum tree my late wife planted 31 years ago. "Didn't I tell you, love?" I said, keeping my voice flat. I did exactly what I said I'd do. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, I heard her swallow. "My name is Reginald Whitlock. I'm 64 years old, and I've lived in the same weatherboard house in Ballarat my entire adult life. My wife Marjorie passed away from ovarian cancer when our boy was 19, just starting his second year of veterinary science at Melbourne Uni. After we buried her, it was just the two of us, just me and Tobias against the world, as I used to say to him when he was a little fella with scraped knees and a head full of dreams about saving every stray cat in the southern hemisphere. I worked 2 jobs to put that boy through uni. By day, I ran my electrical contracting business, climbing into roof cavities at 58 years old until my knees started giving out. By night, 3 nights a week, I drove a delivery van for a freight company out of Wendouree. I never told Tobias about the second job. He thought I was at union meetings. I didn't want him to feel guilty about the cost of his textbooks, his rent in Carlton, the petrol he needed to drive home on weekends. When he graduated, I sat in the front row at the ceremony, and I cried like I hadn't cried since the day Marjorie's heart stopped. I cried because she should have been there. I cried because we had done it. I cried because my boy, our boy, was going to spend his life doing something that mattered. Then he met her. Her name was Camilla Beresford Hayes. She came from old Toorak money, the kind of family that had a coat of arms on their front gate and 3 generations buried in Brighton Cemetery. Her father was something high up in commercial property. Her mother chaired charity galas and wore pearls to the supermarket. Tobias met her at a registered veterinarian's networking function in South Yarra when he was 28, and she was 26, and working in pharmaceutical sales. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. She was beautiful in the way an icicle is beautiful, and I should have trusted my gut from the first dinner. The first time I had them over for a roast, Camilla made a comment about my dining room curtains. She said it lightly, with a smile, the way her sort of woman is trained to do. "Oh, Reggie, these are so wonderfully retro." I knew what retro meant in her mouth. It meant cheap. It meant out of date. It meant the woman you used to be married to, mate, was tasteless. Marjorie had sewn those curtains by hand the year we moved in. I never said a word. I just smiled and offered her more peas. They got married 18 months later at a vineyard in the Yarra Valley. Camilla's parents paid for most of it, but I sold a piece of land my own father had left me up in Daylesford to contribute, $47,000. That piece of land was worth the inheritance my dad spent his life building. I handed it over without a second thought. I gave a speech at the wedding about Marjorie, about Tobias as a little boy, about how proud his mother would have been. Camilla's mother dabbed her eyes with a linen handkerchief and told me afterward it was very sweet, very heartfelt. I felt patronized, but I let it go. New family, new start. For 3 years after the wedding, Tobias worked at a mixed practice in Geelong. He was good. He was loved by the farmers and the old ladies with their dachshunds. But Camilla wanted more. Camilla had ambition. And ambition, I've learned, is a polite word for hunger that never gets full. She started in on him about opening his own clinic. Her own clinic, really. Since she was already planning the branding and the color scheme and the boutique location in Hawthorne. A lifestyle veterinary practice, she called it. For the dogs of inner-city professionals who carried their pets in handbags and wanted aromatherapy with their flea treatments. The numbers didn't work. They didn't have the deposit. Banks weren't lending the kind of money she wanted to, a vet with 3 years' experience and a pharmaceutical sales rep with credit card debt. So she came to me. She came to me with Tobias trailing behind her like a kelpie that had forgotten how to bark. She sat in my lounge room on the couch Marjorie picked out, and she said, "Reggie, we've prepared a business plan. Tobias's career trajectory really requires this next step. We're looking at a small bridging arrangement from family, given current market conditions." A bridging arrangement from family. I'll never forget that phrase. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing, but it was Tobias's dream. Or it had become his dream, which I told myself was the same thing. So I did what I'd done my whole life. I did what fathers do. I remortgaged the house in Ballarat. I cashed in the superannuation I'd been building for 40 years of self-employment. I emptied the term deposit I had set aside for an overseas trip. Marjorie and I had planned before she got sick. I put $240,000 into their clinic. I didn't ask for shares. I didn't ask for a contract. I asked for nothing, except that he be happy. The clinic opened. It was beautiful. White subway tiles and brass fittings and an espresso machine in the waiting room. Camilla had her name on the wall too, listed as practice director, even though she'd never qualified for anything in her life except shopping at David Jones. For about 6 months, things seemed all right. Tobias rang every Sunday. He came up to Ballarat at Easter. Then the calls got shorter. The visits stopped. Camilla started screening his phone. I'm sure of it. Because every time I rang on a weekend, she'd answer and tell me he was with a patient or in surgery or just stepped out. "Reggie, I'll have him call back." And the call never came. I told myself he was busy. I told myself a young man building his career didn't have time for an old fella in a country town. I told myself a lot of things in those 2 years that I shouldn't have told myself. The truth was sitting right in front of me, and I was too proud and too lonely to look at it. The clinic was so successful that they decided to open a second location. A bigger one. In Camberwell this time. And they wanted me to chip in again. $80,000 for renovation and equipment. Tobias didn't even ring me himself. Camilla emailed me a PDF. I rang him. It took 4 days for him to call back. "Dad, it's a really good opportunity," he said. His voice sounded thin, like he was reading off a script she'd written. "The expansion is going to set us up for life." I asked him if he was happy. He didn't answer the question. He said, "Dad, can you help us or not?" I helped them. Of course I helped them. I took out a personal loan against what little equity I had left. I sent the $80,000 into their business account on a Tuesday morning in March. I sent a card with it. The card said, "I'm proud of you, son. Mum would be too." He didn't acknowledge the card. Camilla sent a thank you text with 3 emoji. The new clinic opening was supposed to be in October. I knew this because I'd asked Tobias when I sent the money. He said October, around then. I bought a new shirt for it, pale blue. Ironed it twice. I had my hair cut at the barber on Sturt Street and asked him to take a bit extra off the sides because I wanted to look smart for my son. October came. No invitation. I rang. Camilla answered. "Hello, love," I said. "I just wanted to check the date for the clinic opening so I can book a hotel down in Melbourne. I thought I'd come down the night before, take Tobias out for breakfast on the day." She laughed. It was a small laugh, almost embarrassed for me. "Oh, Reggie. We had the launch yesterday. It was lovely. We celebrated yesterday." I felt the kitchen floor tilt under me. I put my free hand on the bench. "Yesterday? Yes. Last night. Just a small do, very industry-focused. We kept it tight, you know, just for people in the profession. Other vets, specialists, our pharmaceutical contacts. Just for those with relevant qualifications, really. You wouldn't have known anyone there, love. It would have been a bit awkward for you." I didn't say anything for a moment. I watched a magpie land on the back fence and stare at me through the window. Tobias didn't ring me. Oh, he meant to. He's been flat out. He'll call you when he gets a chance. We're just so busy. You understand, don't you? I said yes. I said yes. Because that's what I'd been saying for 3 years. I said yes, and I hung up the phone. And I stood in my kitchen in the silence, and I looked at the new blue shirt I'd hung over the back of the chair, ironed and ready. And I felt something inside me go very calm, very quiet. That afternoon I drove. I didn't plan to drive to Melbourne. I just drove. But 2 hours later, I was sitting in my ute outside the new clinic in Camberwell, parked across the road under a plane tree, watching the front door. The sign was beautiful. Brass letters. Hawthorne Camberwell Veterinary Lifestyle Co. Tobias's name was small underneath. Camilla's name was bigger. After about 40 minutes, Camilla came out with 2 other women I didn't recognize. They were laughing. She was wearing a cream-colored coat I'd never seen before. The kind that costs more than I used to make in a month at my busiest. They walked down to a cafe 2 doors up and sat at the front window. And I watched her for a long time. Watched her toss her head back when she laughed. Watched her show the other women something on her phone, a photo, probably from the night before, the night I wasn't invited to. Then I drove past their house in Hawthorne. I'd only been there twice in 3 years. Both times briefly. The house had a new fence. A new front garden, professionally landscaped. There was a black European wagon in the driveway that hadn't been there last time I'd visited, with personalized plates that said something cute about being Camilla's. Inside the open garage, I could see Tobias's old Hilux gone, replaced by a 4-wheel drive that would have set them back $150,000 at minimum. I sat in the ute on their quiet, leafy street, and I did the maths. I'd been a tradesman my whole life. I know what things cost. The renovations, the cars, the clothes. The clinic, Camilla insisted, needed marble countertops in the consultation rooms. The lifestyle. It didn't add up, not on a young vet's income, not with all that debt, not even with the money I'd already poured in. There was something else going on. I drove home that night and I rang the Bendigo branch of my bank where I'd done business for 41 years. I asked to speak to Daniel, the manager I'd known since he was a teller. I asked Daniel to look at every transaction I'd authorized related to Tobias and Camilla over the past 3 years. I asked him to look very carefully. Daniel rang me back the next morning. "Reg," he said. "Mate, I think you need to come in and sit down." I drove to Bendigo. I sat in his office. He had printed everything out. Spreadsheets and bank statements and photocopies of checks. It turned out Camilla had been added as an authorized signatory on a joint facility I'd opened for the clinic. Back at the very start, when she'd come over with a stack of paperwork and a pen and said it was just a procedural thing for the accountant, I'd signed without reading. My boy was about to open a clinic. I trusted them. Over the past 2.5 years, she had pulled an additional $162,000 out of that facility. Without my knowledge, money I was technically liable for. Money that hadn't gone into the clinic because Daniel had run a parallel check against the business account. The money had gone into a personal account in her name only. From there, it had been used to pay for 2 overseas holidays, a designer handbag collection, dental veneers, a wine cellar fit-out, and the deposit on an investment property in Brighton that Tobias's name was nowhere on. He didn't know. I was certain of it the moment I saw the spreadsheets. My boy didn't know. She was bleeding me dry. And she was bleeding the clinic dry. And she'd cut me out of the launch because I was getting close to old enough that I might start asking questions, and she wanted me out of the picture before I figured out that she'd been treating my 40 years of work like her personal allowance. I sat in Daniel's office for a long time, and I didn't say anything. Finally, I said, "Daniel, I want to close the facility. I want her removed from every account I have. I want a freeze on any pending transfer. I want my name off the second clinic loan as guarantor. If there's any way that can be done. Daniel looked at me steadily. Reg. The second clinic loan. You're a guarantor, but not a signatory. We can absolutely withdraw your guarantee, but mate, if we do that, the bank will reassess the loan. Without your guarantee, given their financial position, they'll likely be called in for a review. They might lose the second clinic. Withdraw it, I said. Reg, are you sure? Tobias. Withdraw it, Daniel. I've spent 41 years being sure of things. I am sure of this. I signed the paperwork that afternoon. I drove home and I poured myself a beer, and I sat on the back veranda, and I watched Marjorie's gum tree move in the late afternoon wind. I thought about her. I thought about what she would have said. She would have said, Reggie, love, you've been a soft touch your whole life. It's about time. A week went by. I didn't ring anyone. I didn't tell anyone what I'd done. Then on a Thursday morning, Camilla rang me. Did the transfer go through, Dad? The bank just rang me. I held the phone and looked out at the gum tree. Didn't I tell you, love? I did exactly what I said I'd do. What does that mean? What are you talking about? They're saying the guarantee's been withdrawn. They're saying we have 7 days to refinance, or they're going to recall the loan. Reggie, what have you done? I noticed she was calling me Reggie now. Not Dad. The mask had slipped that fast. I've stopped being your bank, sweetheart. You can't do this. Tobias is going to be devastated. You're going to ruin him. I'd like to speak to my son, please. He's at the clinic. He's working. He doesn't have time for this. Put him on the phone, Camilla. I'm not asking again. She hung up on me. 2 hours later, my son rang. His voice was different. It was the voice of a man who had just been hit by something he didn't see coming. Dad, what's happening? Camilla's hysterical. She's saying you've pulled the guarantee. She's saying you've taken back something about the loan. I don't understand what's going on. Son, I said. Are you sitting down? Dad, please. Toby. Sit down. I heard him sit. I heard his breath shake. Son, I want you to drive up to Ballarat tonight. By yourself. Don't bring her. I have things to show you that you need to see with your own eyes. And after you see them, you can decide what you want to do about your life. But I'm not having this conversation on the telephone. And I'm not having it in front of her. He came that night. He drove the new 4-wheel drive she'd bought. And I almost said something about it, but I didn't. He looked tired. He looked older than 31. He sat at the kitchen table where he'd done his homework as a boy. And I made him a cup of tea. And I put the spreadsheets in front of him. I watched my son read. I watched him go pale. I watched his hands start to shake. I watched him read the same line 4 times. And then I watched him put his head down on the kitchen table and cry the way he had cried the day his mother died. Dad, he said. Dad, I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. I thought the clinic was making more than it was. She handles the books. She said you were investing because you wanted to. She said you offered. I know you didn't know, son. The trips. The car. She said her parents were helping us. She said her father was gifting us money for tax reasons. Dad, I'm a vet. I don't understand any of this. I trusted her. I trusted you. I thought everyone was taking care of everyone. I know, Toby. The launch. Dad, the launch night. I asked her where you were. I asked her 3 times. She said you'd told her you couldn't make it. She said you weren't well. She said you'd send a card. He looked up at me. His face was wet. You weren't there because of me. Because she didn't invite you. Because I didn't pick up the phone and ring my own father to make sure he was coming to the most important night of my career. I reached across the table, and I put my hand on his hand. You're going to fix this, son. You're not going to fix it for me. You're going to fix it for yourself. Because the man you've been for the last 3 years isn't the man your mother and I raised. And I think you've known it for a while. He stayed 2 nights. We didn't talk much. Mostly we sat. He helped me clean out the shed on Saturday morning, the way he used to when he was a teenager. We didn't say anything important. We just worked. On Sunday night before he left, he said, "Dad, I'm going to see a solicitor on Monday. I'm going to find out exactly what she's done. And then I'm going to make decisions. I just want you to know, I'm going to make them. I'm not going to keep being someone she carries around in her handbag." I nodded. I didn't say anything. He hugged me at the front door, and he held on for a long time. He smelled like the soap I used to wash him with when he was little. Funny what you remember. The next 6 months were ugly. There was a divorce. There was an investigation by the bank. There was a forensic accountant. Camilla's family lawyered up hard. But the paper trail was the paper trail. In the end, she didn't go to prison because Tobias asked the bank not to press fraud charges. And that was his choice, and I respected it. But she had to repay a substantial portion of what she'd taken, and her family had to liquidate the Brighton investment property to do it. Her parents have not spoken to me since. I don't expect they ever will. Their daughter is back living in Toorak, and from what I've heard through mutual acquaintances, she's already engaged to a property developer twice her age. I wish him luck. He's going to need it. The Camberwell clinic closed. Tobias couldn't carry it on his own, and didn't want to. The Hawthorne Clinic survived, and he runs it now. Smaller, simpler, with a second vet and a single receptionist, and no marble countertops. He paid me back the $80,000 from the second clinic over 18 months, every cent. I told him not to. He insisted. I think he needed to do it for himself. I think he needed to know he could. We have lunch every second Sunday now. He drives up to Ballarat. He brings his new partner, a woman named Aroha, who does community veterinary work for Indigenous communities in regional Victoria. She has flour on her hands when she meets you because she's always making bread. She wears no perfume. She asks me about my electrical work and listens to the answer. The first time I met her, she sat at Marjorie's old dining table and she ran her finger along the curtains and she said, "Reggie, did your wife make these? They're beautiful." And I had to leave the room for a minute. I'm 64 years old. I've learned a few things, late in life, that I think are worth saying out loud, because somebody needs to say them. A parent's love is meant to be a foundation, not a withdrawal account. If your children, or the people they bring into your life, only ring you when they need something, that's not a relationship. That's a transaction. And transactions can be closed. You can love your children with your whole heart and still draw a line. The line isn't betrayal. The line is the only honest gift you have left to give them, because without it, they never learn who they are when nothing is being handed to them. Saying yes to your child is not always the same as helping your child. Sometimes the most loving thing a father can do is say no, and let his son fall, and trust that the boy he raised has the spine to stand back up. I should have said no years earlier. I didn't. Because I was lonely after Marjorie passed, and I was frightened of losing him. Fear is a poor teacher and a worse father. Watch the people who marry your children. Watch them carefully. And don't let politeness stop you from naming what you see. You are not being a difficult in-law if you ask questions about money, about plans, about behavior. You are being a parent. The day we stop being parents is the day they put us in the ground, not a day before. And finally, this. If you find yourself, late in life, sitting alone in your kitchen wondering how the people you sacrificed everything for could treat you like a stranger, please understand something. It is not because you didn't love them enough. It is because somewhere along the way, you forgot that you mattered too. Pick up the phone. Ring the bank. Ring the solicitor. Ring the friend you haven't seen in years. Buy yourself the blue shirt, plant the garden. Take the trip, your wife, and you never got to take. The gum tree is still in the backyard. I'm thinking of going to New Zealand next autumn, just for a month. Aroha's people are from the South Island. She's offered to introduce me to her grandmother. I think Marjorie would like that. That's my story. Thank you for listening to an old fella from Ballarat. Take care of yourselves, and take care of each other. And don't be afraid to be the parent your children actually need, not the one they've been told to expect.